So hands off logistics now, getting more to the meat of the show itself. And I feel like one of the topics that has been around forever and we avoid talking about it for whatever reason is this whole idea of what's original, what's stealing, what's borrowing, and both within our activity or our genre and across genres as well. So we're going to get a little bit into that tonight. And I just want to start by saying I am in no way any kind of expert on any of this because everything's out there, and you'll see in the handout we've kind of outlined that. It's all been done before. It's all part of the universe, and if you want to get a little woo-woo about it, all the creativity, all the great ideas are already out there, just waiting for us to, either pluck them out or for them to land on us miraculously, right? But there has been some discussion, and you're right, there has been an increased discussion about it over the last few years. And some of the things we want to talk about is how to find. I come from a place, let me back up a little bit. I come from a place when I was learning choreography or how to choreograph. It coincided with when I started teaching. So learning the art of choreography was something that was it was suggested to us strongly that we find something new, and for whatever reason, we're all inspired by different things. And so I was inspired by my instructors, and I'm sure that some things look like my mentors and my instructors. And I think everybody might have that kind of experience. And so what we're trying to find out here is maybe why something resonates with you personally, and then how can you actually find the reason why it resonates with you. And instead of lifting it verbatim, and you may not even know you're doing that, you're just spinning, you're watching YouTube, your instructors are in front of you. But sometimes it happens that things tend to look a little more like maybe somebody else rather than you. And like I said, I have been an offender of this because, and I don't even want to say an offender, it has happened that way because I'll be doing something and inevitably one of the other people I'm standing around with at a rehearsal will say, so-and-so did that in 19 blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, oh my God, I didn't even know that, and I thought I just stumbled upon it, and they'll be like, no. So, then I have to go back and think, okay, number one, how did that happen? What was I thinking about? Was I thinking about the overall arc of the show? Was I thinking about this one specific moment in time? And how can I get to my own expressive viewpoint of that idea so that it becomes my own imprint and my own take on what that is. And so I think whether it be within the activity, seeing something, and you may not even know, it may be like something subconscious that you saw, or outside of the activity where you went to see, we'll just say Hamilton or something like that, and you're like, oh, wow, that was a cool idea, I'm going to use that. I think it's very important to find a way to actually mold that into you, because Tom Hanks said it best on that awards show just recently, right? He said, I steal from everybody. I steal from all of my colleagues, and we all want people around us that are the best. We want to surround ourselves with the most creative and the most inspiring people. And then, we pick and choose together, whether we're collaborating or whether we're working on our own. I think it's important to go a little deeper if you feel like, even if you're stealing from yourself. And that's another point, like every so often I'll say, like, oh, I'm going to use this. I can do this phrase because I did this 4 years ago, and I'm going to steal it from myself, and I'm just going to do it again. But I think it's important then to stop however you're realizing that. Well, first of all, it's important to realize it. And then secondly, it's important to back up a little bit and see if you can find why that happened. And given that inspiration, given that desire to make something from that, use the tools that will help you find how it can be your own. And so one of the things I want to talk about is doing the work here in terms of taking that idea and bringing it into a studio or in front of your, in front of your desk if you're staging, or, even creating music or whatever it is. And I'm not an expert on that at all, but, and finding, using the tools of spatially and qualitatively and, emotionally even. What are you trying to say? And can you work with those tools? And can you get a little sweaty and figure out a way to stumble upon a development of an idea that is truly and remarkably yours? And those aha moments are really cool. They're really cool because then you've taken an idea and you've taken an inspiration. And I think inspiration is really important for us to have. And you've kind of let it seep into you. And from that seed idea, you've let it grow into a plant that looks totally different from the plant or the tree next to you. So I know I said I was going to ramble on, but I'm really, really passionate about this, and I really, really want to state an example. This has nothing to do with color guard. I had a choreography student years ago who, after going through the whole semester, came into class with the final, and I had seen her progression. So this student was actually choreographing after the choreography class, was choreographing for the final show, stage show. And she came in with this idea that was clearly a piece of choreography from a famous choreographer. And so I just said to her, you are clearly inspired by this person, but it was literally verbatim. And we talk about this as dance faculty. We do talk about this quite a bit. It's a hot topic there as well. And what I said to her was, you saw something that resonated so deeply with you. And now you have to go back and you have to find the tilt on it. Even if that means taking the whole thing on a tilt, or taking the whole beginning into the floor, or making a totally different shape. I want you to just close your eyes and tell your dancers to do something, to go to a different place in the room on the stage. And I want you to start there. And they can use some of the same movements, but I want you to have them improvise, and I want you to talk them through it the whole time. And I want you to see what you get. And what she came back with was pretty impressive, because it was a variation that looked nothing like the original. It was a variation that was inspired by rather than borrowed or stolen, I guess. She actually stole it.
Wow.
So, and then maybe we can get a little bit into the difference between stealing and borrowing, since we've put that on the outline. But so honoring, I feel like in this instance, she actually was able to go beyond, transcend, and actually honor the fact that she was inspired by something. And then with her skills, her improvisation skills, and this day and age in color guard, I think pretty much everybody has that in their toolbox, in their arsenal of how to find movement from an idea, or how to find movement from a seed phrase. So I think anyone can take that tool and kind of go off in a different direction, maybe put on a whole different piece of music, maybe do it in silence, see what it means with that different background or one of the elements shifted. Does that make sense?
It
Um,
does.
yeah. So, um, because I don't know that I have a lot more to say on it, except for that that making we're all going to see stuff, and we're all going to have that propensity for, is that the right word? Or that there's going to be that lean to start to move in a certain way that feels good, whether it's the way we feel or whether it's the way we felt when we saw something.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important, no matter what, level you're working with, whether you're working with the A class or a regional A, um, you know, or an open class. It's a little bit different when we get into world class, right? Because the world class, it needs to be the epitome of original, right?
Yes.
Um, it,
Inventing the language. Their job is to reinvent, recontextualize the language. We're
yeah,
learning vocabulary in the A's. In the opens, it's applying the vocabulary or the language of color guard. And in world, we are questioning what that language is, how it can be applied, and inventing new words constantly. Those
sure.
distinctions and how I think those your obligations in your inspiration, and that's why the things that feel derivative in the world class are a little bit bigger of an offense, and again, we're talking honor. It doesn't manifest into a judge response until you're in that box 6, setting new standards and things like that. But judges that are older guys that have been around for a while will know when something feels derivative. And when it comes to invention and things like that, where they can credit you, may withhold some of that credit at that point.
Yeah, and I think the main takeaway here is that, um, there used to be a song. Still is a song, but one of my mentors, George Zingali, who will be a very unfamiliar name to a lot of people, I'm sure, but used to go by this Sondheim piece that said, "Anything you do, let it come from you, then it will be new." And I think I have always tried to, even before, I actually studied choreography. I guess I always tried to honor that, try to kind of get into the idea that, everything's out there. And just like spins, a spin is out there. Somebody invented spinning a rifle, a saber, a flag, So, Peggy invented the Peggy spin. People have done variations of that. Tosses. They're out there, and then people invented new ways of putting the equipment up into the air, But even with those compulsories, there's a way to approach them that's uniquely you. And I think touching that is what touches the audience, no matter what level you're at, because you can keep it simple and have the characteristic be you, And if you're replicating a musical, if you're using a musical number, you're doing chorus line or whatever. Yeah, and now we're getting into, borrowing across genre.
Program. Yep.
Yeah. And so if you are doing that, you want to make sure that you understand why that music inspires you. And I don't know, I guess now maybe we could put questions out there. If you're not looking at your sheet, and I have to put my glasses on again
All right.
because, you know, what is the difference between doing this within the activity or going to another genre? Is it okay to borrow or steal from something that's been staged, or from, gymnastics, or from ice skating? Is that okay to lift something verbatim? Is it okay to lift an 8 count phrase or a 32 count phrase from chorus line, you know, um, or cats, or, so I don't know if anybody, I can't see that screen anymore, but
I think, Carol, again, these are hypothetical questions. It's not our job to answer these tonight. I do think the obligation is different in the world class than it is in the regional A class. Part of me I want to go back as we're getting close to the end of our time. And the essential thing that you said from the very beginning that seems to be a running theme is that you found something that resonated with you that inspired some you wanting to own it enough to find your version of it or own it enough to be able to do it. So I'm going to go back to young Carl Lowe in the middle of West Texas who, would go to a drum corps show and then wanted to figure out with a baseball bat what those rifle things did. And I think it's kind of part of this. Like, I think what we're doing is we're not dismissing the inspiration as being available to you. I think it's almost like, and I did this programmatically with one of the first little groups I marched in also. It's like, it's learning how a watch works. You'll have some people that throw it on the ground and crack it and then work to put it together, or people that intentionally will disassemble in a certain order, lay the pieces out and work to reassemble. And it's through that reassembly and that dissection, if you will, where they gain the knowledge. Whether they're going to replicate the clock or not, or the watch or not, is beside the point. It's me figuring out what it was it took to make that happen. And once I know what it takes to make that happen, it makes it easier for me to go beyond. So there I'm doing the work that you're talking about also. And I think we come to a point creatively where we, in order to maintain a singular identity, sometimes we get resistant to trends and things that we see. The Peggy spins, which were universal, but because we had video, we knew they were. But think like the toss spiral catch. That definitely had its period. And it's one of those things that I have to figure that out. I have to go through that in order to go beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to saying, I refuse to do that because that's so trendy and it feels like everybody does that as a cop out, and it feels like, oh my God, one more individual that's doing that thing, rehashing. But it did have its time period. It had its point of impact where everybody got excited about it and everybody had to figure it out. But we as an activity have moved beyond that in the same way that we would move beyond the Peggy spins. And not that they look quaint, but they're a step in our process. We go through it in order to get past it, to now reinvent other things that require that same type of detachment of the equipment in the air, finding the peak in order to find the fall, and understanding how to calibrate a catch no matter what you do underneath it. I think it's those principles, those discoveries of those essential bits of information that's key. And then it's the spending the time, doing the work that you said that says, okay, how can I make this my own? I know that there's an aspect of that toss spiral that can sit still or it can travel. Why do I now have to pretend like that's the best thing I can do? Why can't they be a part of a phrase? Why can't that be part of a traveling phrase that ends somehow else that says, no, I'm more brilliant doing this? That's just one more crayon in my box. That's not the only.
And that's what I was going to say, is that we're all starting with the same, paints. We're all starting, and I think we've talked about this before. We're all starting with the same primary colors, right? And so we have red, yellow, blue, and the just wonderful thing, and I think if we put paints in front of everybody, I don't think there would be two paintings the same.
Right.
I really don't. It would be fun to be at a convention or some sort of, that would be fun to have a session. But the cool thing about our activity, and I think what makes it, different from a lot of others, is that we have props inherent in our, and it's not just a ribbon like rhythmic gymnastics. We have these different pieces of equipment that spin in a certain way, but keep spinning in different certain ways based on how we explore. It's infinite. It's really infinite. And we could take the Peggy spin and we could do it, upside down and roll with it, and, do a forward roll and fit it in there or something. Oh, I came toward the camera. But, we could invent infinite possibilities here. And I'm not saying everybody has time or to do that, but there is a crayon box that has this. I don't know how many there are in the crayon box now, 720 or something like that. Something ridiculous. But I just think it's all out there waiting to be explored. And so hopefully that's inspiration to people.
Yeah. I'm going to go through two more points that kind of really resonate when anytime I talk to you, because you also use improv to stumble upon style, you know, where you're taking a skill that may be common, but you find another way to look at it. And so I'm going to argue to people, you know, and you'll remember from the advisory board where I said our activity is in this stylistic crisis right now. You know, we're getting ready to do all of these first shows where everybody's in these rehearsal blocks and they're all warming up together. And I dare you to pick your kids out of the room to figure out what it is about the choreography that makes them look different, you know, because they're wearing the same thing without the music playing. What is it about the choreography? And style is one of the easiest ways to recontextualize some of those things that get exciting to people. But the other thing that you talk about that I want to illustrate for people in this process in late January, where everybody's cramming in choreographers for hire, all the guns for hire are out, and you know, having to fill in the blanks, is when you get to certain situations, you get into things like, oh, the stager has says, you know what, we need some relief from this moment. Let's take them to partners, you know? And so you get to the point and then you go through your brain and go, okay, well, what are the expected? What are the givens? What are the things that you know always fit this situation? And I think, you know, Rick has talked about it, but I've heard you talk about this also. You have the obligation to accept that, know that you have images that pop into your head. Now find a way to contrast those images. Now find a way to find the unexpected answer. Find the thing that is given new life in this context of the duplicity of partners, whether it's weight sharing or not. And so, at the risk of putting words in your mouth, I wanted to say those two things before we have to stop because we've come to the end of our time. Do you have
Okay.
anything you want to wrap up? But I mean,
Well, I just want to put one more short
yeah,
idea that's a bigger
sure.
topic out there,
Yeah.
that technique and style are not separate.
Hmm.
You need one to gain the other. And I think they're married.
Awesome.